morning. Can you hear me? Microphones are good? Online is good? Everything is good, except the weather, right? Thanks for inviting me and for the support that I always get from this group. It's amazing. I feel really honored to be able to come every year and tell you about all the things that we're doing. I have a lot to cover, so let me just start really quick here. I'm going to tell you about the drought. Of course, we have to talk about it, whether we like it or not. I'm going to tell you a new, exciting new bean variety that we are releasing now. Also, I'm going to tell you what I consider a good breeding accident in slow darkening beans, not slow darkening pintos. There's a little bit of feedback there. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to tell you about magic we're doing for white mold resistance. Sounds pretty excited, but probably isn't. We'll see. And then I'm going to give you a quick update on what's going on with that transgenic bean in Brazil. Okay? So let's start. We got dry beans and more, right? Drought conditions affecting the whole region. This is not news for everybody. Our seed yield average in North Dakota, one of the lowest I've seen since I've been in this job, so pretty concerning. Kidneys were less affected. Of course, they're mostly irrigated, so that explains a lot, right? I'm hearing a lot of reports of smaller seed size, too. And we got additional issues in some other areas that I'm going to mention. A little peach, for those of you who haven't picked the variety testing bulletin. It's actually orange. It's showing up here in white, but you know, it's outside. If you want to pick one of those, just keep in mind that last year was very unusual, as everybody knows. So it's actually a thinner booklet this year because we lost a lot of those experiments. A lot of issues with different things. Drought, of course, the most important one. But we also had issues with early flooding at the beginning of the season. In some cases, I had issues in some nurseries with dicamba drift. I'm pretty sure some of you did as well. Soil compaction. For the first time, I saw fusarium wilt in some fields. We even had leaf hoppers, which is really common for dry years, drought conditions, right? And you know, some of the results, even though we got them, when we look at the statistical analysis, it was like, yeah, this is not worth even publishing. There's so much noise here that it's going to cause more misinformation than actually good information for you guys, okay? So keep up. Hopefully things are going to be better next time. If you don't get a chance to get a copy, you can always email me, email extension. If not, all this information is online. Anyway, you can go to that website and even look at previous years that we have done, okay? As you know, I'm one of those guys that kind of sees the glass half full instead of half empty, right? So for me, on the good side, we got less disease pressure. Usually when you have a dry year, we get to see less disease. You know, with the exception of that fusarium wilt I mentioned before, there was a little bit of common bacterial blight here and there. Almost no white mold, you know, few exceptions. We got overall pretty good harvest conditions. At least that was my case when I was doing the harvest in our trials. Pretty sure that was the case for many of you. So that consequently caused that we got good seed color, especially on our pintos, right? Good prices too, really good prices. For how long? I didn't bring the crystal ball today, so it's hard for me to know. Are we heading in the right direction? I think so, again, but I'm a positive guy, so don't trust me. If you look at it, on the left side, you see the drought conditions for North Dakota back in August 31st last year. And this picture, actually on the right, was taken yesterday from the website. And as you can see, drought conditions are way better today as they were 5 months ago, right? We're getting a lot of snow. That's good news and things like that. Soils are going to be able to recharge, et cetera, et cetera. All right, let's change topics. We got a new Navy. It's going to be called ND Polar, right? Because as today, we're experiencing polar conditions anyway, right? So that's why we decided that would be a good name for our conditions. let's jump right there into some of the data. This is just a graph showing you the total production of dry beans in North Dakota in 2020 and 2021. And if you want a good proof that 2021 was a tough year, look at that graph. We pretty much produce half of what we produced last year, right? But really the purpose of this graph was to show you that in the last 4 or 5 years, navies and blacks had been like kind of fighting for that second place and third place. You know, one year we get slightly more blacks than navies, and then the next year is the opposite. So I'm not sure what's going to happen, but it's quite interesting. For navies, last year, for example, we're talking about probably 125,000 acres that we got in the state. So, I mean, it's a significant market class for all of us, right? Why polar? Well, it's pretty much showing us higher seed yield than most of the commonly grown navy cultivars in the region. It has some upright architecture, which is a must for our region as well. Has bean common mosaic virus resistance, has some intermediate resistance to CBB, common bacterial blight, good plant dry down, and then everything else that is commercially important is still there. Let me show you some of that data. And this is probably the most important graph. I want to show you this. We all get excited when we get something that yields more than what we have available, right? That's how we make progress, hopefully, in most cases. This is data compiled across 23 different experiments across the region between 2015 and 2021, last year. And as you can see, when you combine all that information, which is pretty robust, right? I always tell you, look at these things across years and across locations. That's the only way you can tell if something is really good or not. 21 bags for polar compared to 19 for T9905, which is still around and is still a solid variety. Same for blizzard and metalist. You can see the differences there, right? Ensign, I think the acres are kind of winding down. I don't see as much as I used to, but you know, it was still in our trial, so I decided to include it there. So, seed yield, we're there, right? And it's always exciting to see something that yields more than what we had before. Even more interesting is when I look at what I call stability, how that variety performs across, you know, all those good years and bad years. So in that graph, you have the yield per acre, 100 weights, and then each one of those environments just represent a different trial or a different location where we were testing these varieties, right? So pretty much the higher peaks are the good years that we got good yields, but I want you to focus on the lower yields. And look that in most cases, in those lower yields, those kind of bad years or stressful years, ND Polar was doing better than all the others, which kind of tells you that ND Polar has some sort of improved resiliency to stress, right? It's a good variety for stress conditions, and even better, when you have good conditions, you won't get a yield penalty. You're not penalized for having this variety, right? And that's what you almost want from any variety, that, you know, under the stress is still able to withstand some of that stress, but on the good years is also responding as well. My theory for that is, you know, 10 years ago when I started making crosses for what became ND Polar, I actually use black beans, black by navy bean crosses, which, you know, depending on the school of thought, some breeders think that's a total mistake, some other things is good. I'm more on the school of, you know, I think that we can get decent progenies by mixing, you know, crossing black beans with navy beans, sorry. Because as we know, black beans are quite resilient. They are drought tolerant in many cases. They're more of the tougher guys of the pack. Navies are always kind of the weaker, right? They're more sensitive to stress, to drought, to flooding, to many things that happen in our region. So what I'm seeing is that by bringing those black bean genes into the navies, we were able to improve that resilience, the overall resiliency of the variety, okay? When it comes to other traits, which are always important, as you can see, seed size, measured as 100 seed weight, maturity, plant height, canning, and even the CBB scores. We don't have major surprises there. They're pretty much within the same commercial ranges that we're used to see for navies. Foundation seed is available. So for those of you who are certified seed producers, you can start making your orders now. You go to that website. I know Steve Sebesta is around, so you can also talk to him. He's the director of Foundation Seed Stocks, and start making your orders for foundation seed of this variety. So hopefully, if you're a commercial grower, you will have access to certified seed 2023, right? All right. And that happens for any other variety that we have. Just talk to Steve. If you're interested in seed, we have plenty of it in most cases. All right. Slow darkenings. You know, you always hear me talking about this because I think it's a pretty exciting story, honestly. We started this working with slow darkenings, or trying to start to move the slow darkening trade into pinto beans maybe 10 years ago. Today, we can say that we have slow darkening pintos that yield 2 or 3 times to what those original sources of the gene were yielding, which I think is a pretty amazing story right there, right? In 10 years, we doubled the yields on those original materials. And even better, we have seed yields that are competitive with our regular pintos, right? And then something that happened along the sides that was not really on purpose is that those slow darkening pintos also have faster cooking time, and there is a lot of data to prove that, and I've said that many times here. I think it's interesting because we're talking about time and energy savings for people who work on the cooking side of things, right? And also, very interesting is seeing that they also have more available iron. And this is really important in developing countries, as we'll see. So I don't believe you, Juan. What do you mean by faster cooking beans? Well, if you take soaked beans and put them to cook, you know, did a lot of experiments with different type of crosses and things like that between regular pintos and slow darkenings. And pretty much overall, we saw that the regular pintos take 34 minutes to cook. Slow darkenings take 26 minutes. We're talking about a nice difference there. I wasn't even too excited when they told me about this. But think about a commercial operation. So this is probably not meaningful for us, most of us cooking a pot of beans every other week at home, right? But imagine being a commercial kitchen. Imagine being a canner, you know, putting just industrial amounts of beans into cooking. That's a huge saving in time and energy. Think about the people in developing countries, Latin America and Africa, who still cook with wood. This is a big deal for them, okay? Okay, Juan, tell me about unsoaked beans. Same trends. When you look at this table here, you know, it's comparing 2 regular darkening varieties with 2 slow darkening varieties. And as you can see, you still see the same trend, right? Slow darkening beans cook faster. They absorb water faster. And there are some biochemical reasons that we're getting to understand as to why this happens, okay? Iron deficiency, big deal, not only in developing countries. We actually have issues with iron deficiency here in the US. People suffer anemia even here in the US, right? Because our hemoglobin molecule needs iron to be able to exist. I got this colleague from USDA, his name is Ray Glenn, and he actually came to me and said, I want to test your slow darkening beans for iron availability, because I think I have a hunch that this is going to be even better than anything else we have seen before. And for those of you that don't really have this into perspective, this is the effect of iron deficiency in developing countries. You have on your upper left side, you have 90-year-old kids from rural Guatemala, and you see that line is where they were supposed to be in terms of height versus, you know, kids that have been also 9-year-old, but they've been raised here in the US, and you can see the difference. So this is what iron actually does in kids in some of these places. And look at how many people die on that bottom map because of issues related to iron deficiencies, right? It's a big problem. And of course, the more red, the more issues with iron, as you can see. All right? Big deal. So Ray went ahead and, you know, I sent him samples of different varieties and things like that. On the left side, he went ahead and measured just iron, per se, iron content in those seeds, right? And when you can see that, comparing the regular Pintos with the slow darkenings, you see no major differences, right? There is some noise there, but pretty much the same. But then he goes ahead and measures something known as iron bioavailability, which is nothing else than how much of that iron is in the right molecular form to be absorbed by your digestive system. And look at the magic, what happens there, right? Now we're seeing that the slow darkening Pintos have between 4 and 7 times more bioavailable iron than your regular Pintos. Big deal. Nice story. And it all by accident, right? There is a lot of biochemical stuff that Ray knows about the reasons why this happens at the biochemical level. I'm not going to bore you with biochemistry here. But we were able to publish all those results. If you want to read more about it, you can contact me or look for the paper. But Ray is so excited about this that he's doing a chicken feeding study kind of to validate these results. We are dreaming about clinical studies, but as many of you know, those are extremely expensive. And of course, I'm just a plant breeder, right? I'm not a doctor per se, not the kind that cures people, right? So we'll see what happens with that. Stay tuned, but I think it's a really interesting story. Why? We're going to be talking about added value this afternoon. I think this is one of those greatest examples of added value. You have all these nice attributes about slow darkenings that make them really interesting for market opportunities. Nutritional value, faster cooking time, competitive agronomic performance, Think about Pintos are not just consuming the US. There are also other countries that are starting to get more demand for Pinto beans. New places, new regions, right? Really, really interesting things there. What's happening in North Dakota? It's been 5 or 6 years since we released the first slow darkening Pintos, both public and private. Mixed reactions even today. But I'll tell you this, last year, about 35 to 40% of the Pinto acreage was grown with slow darkening Pintos here in the region. 2022, I don't have the crystal ball again, I left it at home, but Foundation seed of Palomino has been selling like crazy, so that's probably a good indication that things are going that way. If you go to Mexico, Pinto Saltillo, number one slow darkening in Mexico, number 1 variety. Brazil has 4 varieties of what they call slow darkening or late darkening carioca beans. 30% of the acreage of cariocas in Brazil. Now I'm starting to see, and even from our program, you're going to start seeing what I call the second generation of slow darkening Pintos. Okay? Better yield, better seed type. Hopefully we'll continue that improvement pace, right? That what we're releasing is better than what we currently have available. Okay. Let me tell you about magic. We're doing magic for white mold. And we have a project funded by the National Sclerotinia Initiative, which, by the way, their annual meeting just happened Wednesday and yesterday. So we just finished those meetings yesterday. But actually, it's more boring than just doing magic. That acronym stands for Multi-Parent Advanced Generation Intercross. That's really boring, Juan. What that means? Well, it means something similar to what you will do with your ancestry tree. We're all the product of previous marriages coming from 2 stream sources, right? So we took 8 parents, and those are in the boxes up there, A, B, C, and D. We crossed them, and then we started making this funnel system, the same way that you could do an ancestry tree for any of your families, right? You probably have it already. With that, we were able to develop what we know as 1,000 recombinant lines. So lines that combine different combinations of those 8 parents that are on the top. So 1,000 lines. That was a lot of work that we started back in 2014, right? Then we went ahead and tested those in the greenhouse. There is a really nice greenhouse test that you can do for resistant. So on the top, you see the resistant reaction. It's called the straw test. Pretty common, done in many breeding programs. And then you have the susceptible reaction where the plant pretty much dies in 3-4 days. Okay? Really, really aggressive thing. What we found with that is that we have about 30 lines, or 3% of that population, that have shown resistance in the greenhouse. And now we're testing that in the field and seeing if, we're going to have something that is going to be interesting there. And this is a picture from oaks in one of the trials. And then you can start seeing interesting things. These are small plots. And you start seeing, those circles are showing things that this is under white mold pressure. So you can see, for example, on that bottom left picture, there is an empty space in front of the circle I have there. That's a dead plot because of white mold versus the one on the back still alive, or the one on the left, right? Things like that. So very promising. I would say stay tuned for this. This is still a work in progress, but I think it's really interesting, and that's why I wanted to show you our preliminary results on that. Finally, I want to finish with an update on what's going on with the transgenic carioca bean, because I get a lot of people asking me about it. Every time I'm in meetings or something, I get people asking me, well, what's going on with that? You can see there a package. This is actually on the gondolas and shelves in the supermarkets now. It's available as a commercial pack product. And the government in Brazil also has a labeling system. So you see that triangle with a T there? That means it's a transgenic product. They have a labeling system. My understanding is we're going to have a similar labeling system in the US pretty soon, right? So, or I think it's already there. So, quite interesting, right? There was not much available of that. Only about 4,000 acres were grown and produced last year. I'm pretty sure more is going to be produced in 2022. The big question is always, what's going to be the dynamics with consumer acceptance, right? What's going to happen with that? I don't have the answer for that yet. I'm always in close contact with my colleague and breeder, Tiago Souza. He was the one who sent me this picture. And I'm always telling him, keep me posted on this thing, because we're really interested as industry to see what happens and what's the dynamics that is going to happen in Brazil with this transgenic bean. It's resistant to something we don't have here. It's known as bean golden mosaic virus. Don't worry, we don't have that here, so it's not of use for us in the US. This is a disease that it's only happening in the tropics, okay? So as a trait, it's not of interest, but as a case study, I think it offers us really interesting opportunity to see what's going to happen with the whole industry, the whole food chain, right? The whole value chain. More things, but of course I only have 20 minutes. Mitch didn't give me more time, so for next year, I'll be probably telling you more about a potential slow darkening pinto. I'm talking about that second generation of slow darkening pintos, right? So it's coming. We also are in the last works for probably releasing a new dark and a light red kidney. We keep working with those magic lines that I was showing you before. And we're using now drones and robocarts to kind of navigate through our breeding nurseries and do a lot of what we call now high throughput phenotyping, right? Measuring a lot of these traits using technology. So I'll tell you more about that on the next time I'm here. Finally, I just want to thank you, a lot of the people that is part of this effort. Of course, I don't do these things just by myself. I have a huge group of people that helps me and makes all the program be successful. Sorry if I didn't include your name there, just, oversight. So come and tell me and I put your name there next time. But we have a lot of sponsors and a lot of people. And of course, Northarvest is one of the biggest supporters of our program. So thank you for that. I'm done.